The Washington draw dropped on Saturday night. Within minutes, one matchup dominated social media. Alex Eala could be on course for a second-round showdown with defending champion Leylah Fernandez. It was the headline every tennis account wanted. A rematch between two of the tour's brightest young left-handers. A chance for Alex to avenge her defeat from earlier this season. On the surface, it's exactly the kind of storyline that sells a tournament, but here's the problem. Alex Eala isn't playing Leylah Fernandez on Monday. She has to earn the right to face her first. And that's where this story becomes far more interesting than the headlines suggest. Because standing in Alex's path isn't an inexperienced qualifier or a lower-ranked player hoping to pull off an upset. It's an Olympic gold medalist, a former world number 4, a player whose current ranking tells almost nothing about how dangerous she really is. In other words, the biggest challenge of Alex Eala's week may arrive before the matchup everyone is already looking ahead to. And that's only part of the story, because Washington isn't just another tournament on the calendar. For Alex Eala, it could shape the rest of her season, not because she's defending a title, not because she's carrying enormous ranking pressure, but because she's carrying almost none at all. That's an unusual position to be in. Most players arriving in Washington are protecting points they earned 12 months ago, los early, and those points disappear, winten again, and they simply replace what was already there. It's one of the less obvious realities of professional tennis. Rankings don't just reward what you achieve today, they also remember what you achieved last year. Every tournament becomes a balance between protecting the past and building the future. For Alex Eala, that balance looks completely different. The North American hardcourt swing has traditionally been one of the most important stretches of the WTA season. Washington, Toronto, Cincinnati. Then finally, the US Open 4 tournaments that often determine how players finish the year. Whether they climb the rankings, secure better seedings, or lose months of hard-earned progress, for many players near the top of the rankings, this stretch brings enormous pressure. One disappointing week can cost hundreds of ranking points. One early exit can undo months of consistency. Alex arrives under very different circumstances. 12 months ago, her North American summer never really had the chance to develop. Early defeats limited her momentum before injury interrupted the rest of her schedule. As a result, she has remarkably few ranking points to defend throughout this entire swing. That changes everything. Every victory now becomes an opportunity to add, rather than simply protect. Instead of trying to stop her ranking from falling, Alex has the rare chance to keep climbing with almost every match she wins. It's the kind of position every rising player hopes to find themselves in. Freedom, opportunity, momentum. But opportunity rarely comes without a challenge. And Washington has provided one immediately. This year's Wimbledon CDDC Open isn't lacking quality. Grand Slam champions, former world number 1s, Olympic medalists, top 20 regulars. One of the strongest fields the tournament has assembled in recent years. Only the top 8 players receive protected seeding. Everyone else, regardless of recent form, can be drawn against virtually anyone. Alex entered Washington at the highest ranking of her career. Fresh from the most successful few months of her professional life. A breakthrough grass court season, a historic Wimbledon run, growing expectations from fans back home in the Philippines, and increasing attention from the rest of the tennis world. Yet none of that guaranteed her an easier path. The draw offered no rewards for momentum, no protection for confidence, no gradual introduction back onto hard courts after months away. Instead, it handed her one of the most dangerous opening matches imaginable. A player whose ranking says one thing, but whose career says something completely different. Someone Alex already knows, someone with unfinished history. And once you understand who that opponent is, you'll realize why almost everyone has been looking at the wrong match since the draw was released. If the Washington draw had handed Alex Eala a lower-ranked qualifier, or a player still searching for consistency, the conversation surrounding her opening match would be very different. Instead, it handed her Zheng Qinwen. At first glance, that might not sound intimidating. After all, Zheng arrives in Washington ranked well outside the world's top 100 after an injury-disrupted season. For casual fans scrolling through the draw, that ranking is often the first thing they notice. It may also be the most misleading. Because rankings tell you where a player is today. They don't always tell you who that player really is. Not long ago, Zheng Qinwen wasn't fighting her way back into tournaments. She was one of the most feared players on the WTA Tour. She climbed to a career-high world number 4, reached the Australian Open final, and achieved something no Asian singles player had ever accomplished before, winning Olympic gold. those aren't the achievements of a dangerous outsider. They're the achievements of someone who already knows how to beat the very best when the pressure is highest. That's what makes this draw so uncomfortable. Alex isn't facing a player trying to prove she belongs. She's facing someone trying to remind the tennis world who she already was. Players returning from injury are often among the most difficult opponents to evaluate. Their ranking reflects months spent away from competition. Not necessarily their level once they're back on court. Every tournament becomes another step towards rebuilding confidence, another opportunity to climb back to where they believe they belong. That makes them unpredictable. And unpredictable players are often the most dangerous. There's another reason this matchup deserves far more attention than it's received. These two already share history, not at WTA Tour level, but on one of the biggest stages either had experienced at that point in their careers, the 2023 Asian Games. Alex Eala was only 18 years old, ranked outside the world's top 180. Zheng entered that semifinal as one of the tournament favorites. The gap in experience was obvious, the gap in ranking even greater. The opening set reflected exactly that. Zheng dominated. She controlled the rallies, pressed Alex behind the baseline, and looked firmly on course for a routine victory. Then everything changed. Alex refused to disappear. She fought through the second set, saved match points, forced a tiebreak, and somehow turned a match that looked finished into a genuine contest. For a moment, it felt like one of the biggest upsets the Asian Games had ever seen. Alex even broke early in the deciding set, putting herself within touching distance of the final. Eventually, experience prevailed. Zheng steadied herself, raised her level when it mattered most, and closed out the match before going on to win Olympic gold. Alex left with the bronze medal. She also left with something else, proof that she could push one of the world's elite players to the limit. That semifinal is important for another reason. It remains their only previous meeting. Neither player has faced the other on the WTA Tour. There are no hard-court patterns to compare, no completed rivalry, just one unforgettable match played under completely different circumstances. 3 years later, everything has changed. Alex is no longer the teenager trying to surprise established stars. She's a Wimbledon fourth-round finalist, a top 30 player, one of the fastest rising names in women's tennis. But Zheng has changed too. She's no longer climbing towards the top. She's trying to climb back. Those are two very different kinds of pressure. Alex enters Washington carrying momentum. Zheng arrives carrying motivation. Both can be equally dangerous. Their playing styles only add to the intrigue. Alex thrives on taking the ball early, using her left-handed angles to open the court, directing pace instead of simply absorbing it. When she's confident, she forces opponents into uncomfortable positions before rallies fully develop. Zheng presents a very different challenge. She prefers to dictate with raw power. Her serve creates free points. Her forehand can end rallies within a few shots. If she's allowed to control the center of the court, matches tend to move at her pace. For Alex, the opening exchanges become crucial. She can't afford to spend long periods defending behind the baseline. She'll need to change direction, disrupt rhythms, and use the variety that has become one of her biggest strengths over the past year. This is why Monday's match is far more dangerous than many people realize. It's easy to look at a ranking. It's much harder to recognize the player behind it. Zheng Qinwen may enter Washington without a protected seeding, but very few competitors in this draw possess her combination of experience and proven success on the biggest stages. Which brings us back to the storyline everyone has been talking about since Saturday night. Because if Alex can solve perhaps the toughest opening test in the tournament, only then does the matchup everyone has been waiting for become possible. A second-round meeting with the defending Washington champion Leylah Fernandez, and unlike Zheng, that's an opponent Alex knows all too well. If Alex Eala finds a way past Zheng Qinwen, the storyline everyone has been talking about since the draw was released finally becomes reality. A second-round meeting with defending Washington champion Leylah Fernandez. At first glance, it feels like the match this tournament has been building towards. Two rising stars, two left-handers, two players with Filipino heritage, and one very recent piece of unfinished business because unlike Zheng, Leylah and Alex Eala have already faced each other this season. Their first meeting came during the European clay court swing. On paper, the result looked convincing. Fernandez won in straight sets. She dictated the rallies from the opening game, absorbed Alex's attacking patterns, and forced her into uncomfortable positions behind the baseline. By the end, the scoreboard suggested there was a clear gap between them, but scorelines don't always tell the whole story. Tactics matters. And the context surrounding that match looks very different today. When Alex arrived at that tournament, she was still searching for answers on clay. Her aggressive style hadn't fully translated onto the slower surface. Several early exits had interrupted the momentum she built earlier in the year, raising questions about whether Miami had been a remarkable breakthrough or simply an extraordinary fortnight. Then came the grass court season. Almost overnight, the conversation changed. Alex reached the semifinals in Berlin, defeating Elena Rybakina and Elina Svitolina. At Wimbledon, she achieved what no Filipino player had managed in the Open era, reaching the fourth round after eliminating defending champion Iga Świątek. Those weren't isolated upsets. They were victories earned over several weeks against some of the sport's biggest names. By the end of Wimbledon, Alex wasn't trying to prove she belonged anymore. She had already done that. Leylah's season has followed a very different path. As defending champion in Washington, she arrives carrying something Alex doesn't expectation. Every victory she earned here 12 months ago now comes with pressure to repeat it. Every round becomes another opportunity to protect ranking points. That's one of the hidden realities of professional tennis. Sometimes the higher-ranked player isn't carrying more freedom. They're carrying more weight. It's an interesting contrast. Alex arrives with momentum. Leylah arrives with responsibility. One is chasing more ranking points. The other is trying not to lose them. That doesn't make either player the favorite, but it changes the psychological landscape. There's another important difference between their first meeting and a potential rematch: the surface. Clay rewarded Fernandez's patience. Longer rallies, higher bouncing balls, more time to construct points. Washington offers something different. Hard courts reward first strikes, clean ball striking, taking time away from opponents. Those are qualities Alex has repeatedly demonstrated throughout her career. It's easy to forget where the tennis world first truly noticed her. Not on grass, not on clay, but on hard courts. Miami. That remarkable run through a field filled with Grand Slam champions happened on the same surface she'll return to this week. If grass confirmed Alex belonged among the elite, hard courts were where she first introduced herself to them. That's why Washington feels so significant. It's the beginning of a completely different phase of the season. From here, the tour moves to Toronto, then Cincinnati, then New York. Every result builds towards the US Open. Every victory improves seedings. Every ranking point changes future draws. For Alex, this swing represents opportunity. With so few points to defend, each deep run pushes her closer to another career milestone. A stronger ranking, better protection in Grand Slams, and fewer early meetings against the world's very best players. Those gains aren't guaranteed. Before Washington, there was still one final reality to acknowledge. The opportunity is there, but only if Alex keeps winning, which brings us back to Washington. Most of the attention has centered on Leylah Fernandez, the defending champion, the possible rematch, the headline matchup. But none of that happens unless Alex first clears the much tougher obstacle standing directly in front of her. And even then, one question still remains. Can the player who transformed her season on grass now carry that momentum back onto the hard courts, where the biggest prizes of the summer are still waiting? Because how Alex Eala answers that question may shape not only her week in Washington, but the entire North American swing that follows. So, what is this tournament really about? At first, the answer seemed obvious: a difficult draw. An Olympic champion in the opening round. A possible rematch with the defending champion waiting in the second. But as we followed the path in front of Alex Eala, it becomes clear that Washington was never just about two opponents. It's about what happens next. If Alex loses in the first round, the headlines disappear almost immediately. The anticipated clash with Leylah Fernandez never happens. The excitement created by her Wimbledon breakthrough gives way to familiar questions. Was the grass court run simply a special moment? Can she produce the same level on hard courts? The conversation changes overnight, not because one defeat defines a player, but because professional tennis rarely waits for explanations. Every week brings another tournament, another storyline, another player ready to take the spotlight. But if Alex wins, everything changes. She doesn't just move into the next round. She carries momentum into the biggest stretch of the North American season. A potential meeting with the defending champion, then Toronto, then Cincinnati, and finally the US Open. Each tournament becomes bigger than the one before. Each victory brings more ranking points, more confidence, and a better position for the year's final Grand Slam. That's why the number we discussed earlier matters so much. Alex Eala isn't spending this summer protecting last year's results. She's building something entirely new. Every win lifts her ranking. Every deep run improves her chances of earning more favorable seedings. Instead of chasing the players above her, she's beginning to put pressure on them. Very few young players reach that position so quickly. That's why Washington feels bigger than a single tournament. It feels like the start of another chapter. The Miami Open introduced Alex Eala to the tennis world. Berlin proved she could beat elite players on grass. Wimbledon confirmed those wins weren't isolated moments. Now the hard courts ask a different question. Can she carry that momentum onto the surface where the season's biggest prizes are still waiting? Only the next few weeks can answer that. Perhaps that's why this draw attracted so much attention the moment it was released. Not because it guaranteed blockbuster matches, but because it promised genuine tests. An Olympic champion rebuilding her career, a possible rematch against the defending champion, and beyond them. Some of the strongest competition Alex has faced since becoming one of the tour's fastest rising players, which brings us back to where this story began. Saturday night, the Washington draw appears online. Social media immediately focuses on one name, Leylah Fernandez. The potential rematch, the headline everyone wants to see. But after looking at the full picture, that was never the real story. The real story was everything standing in the way of that match ever happening. Because before Alex Eala can think about defending champions, or the US Open, or climbing even higher in the rankings, she has to solve the challenge directly in front of her. One match, one opponent, one opportunity to prove Wimbledon wasn't the destination, it was only the beginning. And that's why, when the first ball is struck in Washington, the biggest match of Alex Ayala's week won't be the one everyone's been talking about. It will be the one that decides whether every other storyline gets the chance to exist at all.